place your comments here, and we will air them over the air here as we're live on YouTube. Oh, now we're live. Okay, here we go. Sports Corner with Ralph Williams. We're live here from Studio 808 up here in the Allentown section of the city of Pittsburgh. My guest is Joe Kuglis, who is a draft guru from the area here, and we're going to talk about the NFL draft tonight, where we think a few people might go. Some updated headlines that I got today, and that you might have received them as well, Joe. Uh, the Steelers are interested in Baker Mayfield. A prominent reporter from Cleveland said that the Steelers inquired in regards to Baker Mayfield. As you know, he's been cut today by the Cleveland Browns. What do you think about that?
Uh, in part, I find it difficult to believe. I'm not saying it didn't happen. She knows better than I do. I heard the report earlier today as well.
Mm-hmm.
It would undermine what they've already done, right? And
Yeah.
we're in a situation where, perhaps he's a better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky. Perhaps if he was available a couple of weeks ago, they wouldn't have done the signing with Mitch. But bringing in Baker, especially after a subpar year, and with some of the controversy surrounding him. Now, Baker's, in my opinion, has always been a better character guy than some of the folks that they've had in Cleveland at that position. The last couple of weeks brings that into question. I know a lot of people are throwing shade at the guy. Is he a better choice than Mitch Trubisky? I don't know. I mean, have we seen the top of what Baker Mayfield could be? Maybe was he deserving of a number one draft pick overall? Obviously not. I think that people understand that, and he's a pretty average but capable NFL quarterback. But by them going out and signing Trubisky, that would give them four quarterbacks, on this roster. They just had a qualifying offer to Haskins, and what do they do with Mason? It's unsteeler like, in my opinion, to bring that in. It sounds to me like maybe that's a nice conversation piece. I hope for the Steelers' sake that isn't something they would consider. Nothing against Baker. I think he's, like I said, he's a starting quarterback level guy. He's not a top 15 guy, but he's a starting quarterback in this league. I just think the Steelers made a commitment to Trubisky, and whether it lasts a year or two or 10, they have to ride it out. I mean, I don't know where you find the money for that. And if it's worth it when you have so many other holes to fill. And if they are going to look at a quarterback in this draft, whether it's first, second, or third round, maybe I can see that through. But the Baker stuff gives me some pause. We'll see. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and maybe I'm wrong, but I find it hard to downshift and reverse that quickly on
Well,
something that
you
just happened in the last week.
well, you know this, Joe. They made the comments about how Aaron Rodgers was coming here, Deshaun Watson was coming here. Rumors circulate, but this is coming from a pretty prominent reporter. Now, my next question to you is: Josh Dobbs, as is went to visit New England today. Supposedly, I guess they want to sign him or bring him aboard. You know what? If he didn't get hurt last year, I think he could have been a little bit of a little bit of into this conversation too at quarterback. He had that turf toe. I'm surprised he actually came back because turf toe can take you out permanently. We've seen that happen in the past with other athletes. Now, my next question to you, and I was thinking about this while we were talking here. Do you think the Steelers might start losing confidence in Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins? Well, if they were to sign Baker Mayfield, do you think that's the case, or they want to maybe unload Rudolph and try to save some money, or what do you think? Because they have to go to wide receiver now. They just lost wide receivers. They lost Ray McLeod, they lost Juju Smith-Schuster, and they lost I can't remember. But
James
I know,
Washington.
yeah, Washington too. Yeah, he went to Dallas. So,
Right.
and Ray went to the 49ers, and now Juju's with Kansas City. So now some things I think have to focus in the draft, in different directions or free agency. Do you think maybe they just don't trust Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins, or do you think, maybe That's why they're looking at Baker Mayfield.
Well, if they are looking at Mayfield, that tells the story. I also think that signing Trubisky tells the story. If you were confident in Rudolph or Haskins to take the reins, or them have a friendly competition to see who's the starter during the year and switch them in and out and use this as a transitionary year to find your
Hmm.
quarterback of the future, I think they would have stuck with what they had. I mean, Mason has proven that
Right.
he's, an average NFL quarterback, better at a backup role than he is as a starter. Perhaps he's never given a true, hasn't ever been given a true opportunity to start.
Opportunity.
But
Right.
Haskins has and failed. But as a young quarterback, again, you want to give him a chance. This guy had a pedigree coming from Ohio State. He was a mid first round pick. He failed in Washington, and there were some character questions about him too. And the Steelers stepped up and are giving him a shot. If they're serious about Mayfield, I think that really tells the story about where they are with Rudolph and or Haskins. And then to your point, they would have to clear one of them out. Whether I mean,
Right. Oh
Dobbs
yeah.
is clearly the low
Yeah.
guy in the totem pole. I think
Mhm.
he could be a credible backup in New England. He's likely not made for this team at this point with the quarterback room filling up as it is, and with the potential of them drafting one. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them move either a Mason Rudolph or a Dwayne Haskins. They just made a $2 million offer to Haskins to get him to stay. They signed that last week. So if they do move Rudolph and get a late round pick for him or something, that would make some sense. But the Mayfield stuff, I think we'll see what happens. But you're right. I think the Steelers have been at the center, and I think part of that is just generated by the media, right?
Right.
Aaron
Right.
Rodgers is coming, like you said, or Deshaun Watson's
Yeah,
coming.
yeah. I mean, I got tired of hearing that because we all knew, you and I know, and I know the Steelers, that wasn't happening. It was
Right.
too much to give up, too much money to spend. The Steelers had a whole lot, they have a whole lot of other areas that they have to look at, including both lines of scrimmage. Now we're in a wide receiver predicament now. So I
Yeah,
mean, and
yeah, and
sometimes you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I think that if the Steelers, I was hoping they would bring in like an Amari Cooper or sign Jarvis Landry or something as an experienced wide receiver before going into the draft looking for a couple more. They got that kid that I said was going to make the team, and he did, but he was on the practice squad, Rico Bussey, last year. I thought, I think he might be able to get into the mix somewhere this year. Uh, I did predict three things. I predicted they were going to sign Trubisky. I predicted that they were going to start thinking outside the box. And I also predicted they were going to have to sign a kick returner because they have to start getting better field position, especially when you have a new quarterback coming in, and if Matt Canada can get to his offense spinning and rolling, I think they can start scoring some points. And and that's been the biggest thing for a while.
sure. And you're going to see my husky jump up behind me. He's looking
Yeah, I
out the
see that.
window.
Yeah, there.
Yeah, there's a
Hey,
dog outside, so I apologize for that. But he
that's
might start
okay.
cooing here in a minute or two as well when they see
Hey,
them go by. But yeah, to your
I got a
points.
I
Oh,
I got a
go
little
ahead.
Yorkie. I got a little
Oh, no.
Yorkie, and he barks at times.
Oh, well, there's
Whatever.
nothing little about him. He's a big boy, right, Thorky? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, to your points. I mean, what the Steelers have done is filled holes. They took this large, uh, tranche of funding that they had under the cap, and gone out and signed up a bunch of 2 or 1 year deals with underwhelming signings. Right, a lot of that was signing the Arthur Maulettes and the Miles Killebrews and the Montravius Adams, getting them back into the fold for depth reasons. But in typical Steeler fashion, they build through the draft. They pick off the veterans off the piles like the Miles Jacks and add them where they feel. But they're never. I mean, they're never the splashy team to go out and do any of these things. But they've been able to find the James Ferriers of the world, or they're able to go out and get the Miles Jacksons of the world, where they're plugging an immediate hole that they need at a reasonable cost, and they're doing it in a year where they actually had money to spend. And I think that's one of the reasons they're giving Trubisky this second chance is he's affordable. That gives them a time if they do draft a quarterback to develop one. But you're right; they had holes from kick returner and punt returner all the way up to inside linebacker and on the OL And when you look at the players that they signed on the offensive line, I know there's been a lot of buzz about James Daniels and Mason Cole, but again, these guys they didn't go out and land Lyle Collins. They didn't go out and land some of the other larger names that were in that pool of free agents. Instead, they focused on picking guys out that took their bad offensive line and made it average. And I still think that they'll address the OL at some point in the draft, but this gives them the flexibility of not having to do that in round one. Even though this year is deep in OL, I think they would easily find whoever they wanted to find. They would be able to find a tackle, a guard, or a center at 20. This gives them some positional flexibility with these two guys that can both play center and guard. And with re-signing, a core for play left tackle, that tells you that the Steelers are comfortable with him, or right tackle, and they're also comfortable with Dan Moore. So there might be another move. We might see another rookie, maybe even two on the offensive line this year, but I think that you'll see them in later rounds.
Okay, real quick, Joe. Pens are up 3-1 beginning of the second.
Good go.
So
yeah,
they
good
were
go.
down 1-0 going into the second. They were down.
Got to keep winning. Got to keep winning.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the update.
That new guy, Raquel, is playing tonight.
Did he get a goal yet or no?
I don't know. I can't tell here.
It's all good.
I have it here.
Okay.
Yeah. But hey, it's 3-1. They're winning. That's all that counts.
Yeah. As long as we get the W, we needed 2 points to keep pace.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was a spotting today of Mike Tomlin at Liberty University, taking a look at Malik Willis today. They had wings for dinner tonight. That was all big and said. If they do decide to take Malik Willis in the first round, do you see him as a slash for the next couple of years, or do you see him actually going to be like a third-string quarterback and either Rudolph or Haskins, like we talked earlier, may have to go?
I don't think they're going to use him in a slash situation if they do reach out and get a Willis. I think they're going to do and see exactly what happened in San Francisco last year with Trey Lance. Lance came into the league. Once he got into camp, it was obvious to the Niners that he wasn't ready, and they spent a ton of draft capital to get him, and he'll be their quarterback in the future. But it wasn't last year, and it may not even be this year. And I think the Steelers, if they're going to risk doing this with Willis, they've got to understand that he's a 2-year project at a minimum. And I say that with due respect to the guy's athletic ability. That he can jump out of the gym. He can throw the ball out of the gym. The problem
I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I watched him, Joe. And let me tell you what, I went to reach for my drink. He was at one end of the 10-yard line. By the time I had my drink in my hand and turned my eyes to look at the screen, he was at the other end of the 10-yard line. So that's within 10 seconds or less. You know what I'm saying? This guy can run. And I watched him throw. And I mean, so I like Malik Willis. I like Kenny Pickett. Let's get started with some of what we think, you and I, that the Steelers and what direction they may need to go in the first round. There are several needs. They do need a cornerback. They do need to get somebody in here to play corner. They just lost Joe Hayden, which to me I think was really kind of no loss anyway. But they re-signed Akili Witherspoon and a few other guys they got coming back. So I think they're going to be okay. I think they re-signed Terrell Edmonds too, which I wish they would have told him to take a hike. You know what I mean? So but that area, the defensive line, the offensive line, I'm looking at them if they do take Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett in the first round. I'm looking at them in the second round, taking that Daniel. His name is Falele. He's with Minnesota. He's a big offensive guard. I watched him. Yes. Mm-hmm. I think they should take him in the second round. Or if they decide to go defensive tackle in the first round, which is a point of need. Because I didn't see them get anybody in free agency other than re-sign Adams.
That's right.
And, so what do you think? Do you think if they go in that direction, the defensive tackle, I think they should take that kid in the second round, that Falele kid from Minnesota, and he's ranked number 49. I think he'll make it to the second round. I don't think he's a first-round pick, but I think in the second they should look at that kid. He's 380, 6'9 and a half. I saw him in the Senior Bowl. Nobody could get past him. He was like a brick wall. So, but again, that was just, the Senior Bowl. I don't know what his pro day is going to be like. I don't know, or anything like that. So what do you think?
So he's got pedigree, right? He's he's somebody that plays in the Big Ten. They do a lot of running in the Big Ten. And guys that come out of places like Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota make good linemen, right? So I don't think
Right.
that you're going to have a problem plugging and chugging with him on the offensive line if he does fall to the second round and they have an interest in that, right? So I think
Hmm.
that's part one. But I think if you look generically at the first round is typically used on either can't miss players or players that are in premium positions like left tackle, quarterback, corner, and edge rushers. Those are the guys that you want to try to get because they mean a lot more to your team than some of these other positions, which you can get in later rounds, including receiver. Now, Jamar Chase is perhaps a generational talent, and picking him fifth overall was a really good move for Cincinnati, even though everyone said they needed offensive line, which they're
Hmm.
addressing in free agency and also will likely address in the draft. But they got somebody that Joe Burrow was comfortable with, and he made a big difference. In the Steeler case, we don't have Joe Burrow at quarterback. And this year's wide receiver crop is going to be incredibly deep. And there will be guys in the second and third round that they can address to fill that void. I mean, getting back to what your original assertions were at the top of the broadcast, we've lost three receivers in the last week and a half, and that's a
Right.
position they clearly have to fill. Can they use a first round on that? Perhaps, but I'm not sure that Garrett Wilson or a Traylon Burks or even a Drake London fall to them. They might be gone way before the Steelers have a chance to draft. But if depending on how things slide, you can perhaps a Derek Stingley Jr. does make it through. I mean, there's a lot of heat on Andrew Booth right now, and with Sauce Gardner, and I think I have a grade of a first round on five different corners. And if the Steelers decide to go in that direction, perhaps that's why they really didn't address it in the way that they could have by looking at a Stephon Gilmore in free agency. Instead, they went after Levi Wallace, who's been a pretty solid player for the Buffalo Bills, and then bringing back Witherspoon after he improved after a down, early part of the
Down year.
season.
Oh yeah, he was
Yeah,
he was terrible. I wanted to run him out the first couple of games. He was horrible. I
yeah, and
watched
he
him get burned a couple of times, and I said, you know what, this guy, we wasted another draft pick on him. But then he got better, and I credited that to coaching because Terrell Austin was in charge. Now he's the defensive coordinator, but he was in charge of the defensive backfield, and I give it to him for getting him in order and getting him, back in order to get to play the game that he played at the end toward the end of the season because he did
yeah,
play a better game.
yeah, he's still a young guy. Where Hayden is past his
Oh,
prime,
yeah,
and it's perhaps time for everybody to move on there, including Joe. And he
right.
did it with class when he left. But there are guys out there that if the Steelers are targeting one of these prime positions like corner, it does make sense. There are enough guys there that they can find someone at 20 or even trade back and get somebody and pick up some additional draft capital in doing so. I think
Yeah,
that your point about defensive tackle, outside of it being another Casey Hampton, I think the Steelers learned over the last couple of years that they can draft a defensive tackle or a nose guard in second and third rounds, like they did with Hargraves a few years ago. Now, Jordan Davis was had an outrageously successful combine. He
yeah,
lost a bunch of weight. He knew he had to do that. I saw him in that first Alabama game. He was gassed coming off the field. He could barely, like he was just 370 pounds. He just couldn't get off the field
yeah.
when they had situational players and substitutions. Alabama knew it and they kept him on the field. And to the guy's credit, he went out there and lost between 30 and 40 pounds. Who only knows? I mean, the guy's just a mammoth guy, but he's somebody that clearly can make a difference. But do you spend a first round pick
No.
on a
I
nose
mean, I
guard?
mean, if you have enough guys available, if there was a shortage and the
Mhm.
Steelers really needed somebody like that, that's when you actually take somebody like that in the first round. The Steelers can afford, as you're saying, to wait and see what they can get. And the
Yeah,
Steelers have been patient in the draft. There's been a few times they've had a few reaches in life, like Jarvis Jones, Terrell Edmonds, Troy Edwards back in 1999. He
yeah,
was a reach. But I did say the Steelers were going to draft him because then when I had my TV show on PCTV the first time, I said that they were going to draft him because there was nobody else out there that was going to be available. and they needed a wide receiver, and I knew they were going to reach, and they did, and they reached
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah, and
And
in the case of Jordan Davis, they wouldn't be reaching, and that would fill a
right
giant void. It would also free up $9 million that you can recoup by getting rid of Tuitt.
to it,
Uh,
yes,
you know,
exactly.
and
There's another one, yeah,
yeah, so
yeah. He,
there's a few there's a tactical move there that if he's there,
mhm.
I mean, it's hard to pass him up. Or if a Stingley falls, it'll be hard to pass him up. But if the Steelers are that impressed with Malik Willis, or the Steelers are that impressed with Kenny Pickett, you know, again, that's one of those premium positions where you don't get a chance to get the first or second best quarterback in a draft, and it may not be a bad idea to pull the trigger there. Ultimately, though, you know, I see, you know, their holes outside of offensive line are on the defense. They still need a safety. They still need a corner, perhaps a slot guy if Sutton's gotten better. But you know, at the end of the day, there you can perhaps target a few of those in you know the second and third round, if not later rounds. And then, of course, if Jordan Davis is there, it would be really hard for them to pass on that. I get all that, and it also would likely free
Yeah.
up some money for them cutting to it. But you know, we'll see what they do. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how they play this. But if I were them, I would go after one of these premium positions, and or if you're in a position where you think you can trade back, collect the additional draft picks, and still get some guys that you're targeting. You know, maybe that's the way to go.
You're watching Sports Corner with Ralph Williams here. We're here every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. My guest tonight, Joe Kuglis, local draft expert. We're talking NFL draft Steelers. We want your comments here in the comments section. Pens 4 now. Pens 4. Blue
There you go.
Jackets 1. And Crosby just scored. So that was
So there
good.
you go. Keep it
You
rolling.
know, that's it. That's what we have to do here as far as that goes. And do you think the Steelers are going to make any more free agent moves? I mean, any splash moves? Like I know they got Daniels for the offensive line, the Miles Jack, and you know Trubisky, and they signed Zalewski from New England, and you know all these guys that they're bringing in, these new people, you know these new guys, and some. Do you think and Levi Wallace, which actually, believe it or not, a lot of people said that was a good signing. We actually got a good player for a bargain price
Yeah,
because they
he's
said,
done well. He's done well as a starter. He was an undrafted free agent out of Alabama. The Steelers,
Mhm.
when they were down there looking at Alabama a few years ago, had a chance to take a look at him. He snuck away, and Buffalo signed him, and the guy has been a 2-year starter there and a 3-year player. So I think that they've gotten him. Is he a world beater? Probably not. Is he a quality NFL corner? I would say, yeah. I think they did get a steal for the price, and they didn't go overboard. And again, they did it the Steeler way, right? They found somebody was
Mhm.
available that filled a void at a reasonable price that's going to play reasonably, and they're going to depend on their pass rush to force bad passes and their corners and their safeties with Micah Fitzpatrick and whoever they get to fill that strong safety spot. Now, whether Terrell Edmonds comes back or not, that's a safe play. I know that there's been a buzz about Honey Badger, you know, and Tyrann Mathieu coming
Yeah,
here. And Mathieu is a great player. Do the Steelers want to tie up that much money in their safety positions? I think is a question.
right.
And you know, because they're going to have to sign Fitzpatrick here at the end of the year.
I heard
You
they're
know,
bringing back
and
Sean Davis, Joe.
yeah, well, yeah, no, yeah, let's not relive
No, no,
those
no,
past miseries.
no,
but
no.
you know,
That was just a
but
joke.
no, I
That was
get it.
just
But
a joke.
there are guys out there if they do not want to sign Tyrann Mathieu and they do not bring back Terrell Edmonds, there are enough strong safeties in this draft. For example, Dax Hill from Michigan, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Michigan guy. Jaquan
Right.
Brisker from Penn State has really, proven not only is he someone that's fast, but he's also strong and can play the run. I think he's done a great job there. I even like Lewis Seen from Georgia. You know, here's a guy who runs a 4.37. You can get in a later round. You can find him in a second round or a third round. And he's somebody that played on this national championship team along with all these other first rounders that we're going to see here. And he might be someone that slips by. And when the Steelers were down in Georgia taking a look at Davis and some of the backers down there, I'm sure they saw Seen as part of the Georgia day. And there's another wild card in here I'll throw out because I'd like to see a position change for him. But there's a guy from Baylor named Jalen Petrie, and was an
Yeah,
incredible
I've heard of
corner.
him.
Yeah, and at Baylor, I think he or safety. He would be a perfect slot corner for the Steelers. The guy's fast. He's slippery. He's somebody that could play that slot really well. I know that they're comfortable with Cam Sutton, but he's somebody also that if you draft, he's listed as a safety, but I can see him migrating over to slot in the pros. We'll see what happens there, but I think that if they don't get Tyrann Mathieu and they don't get Stephon Gilmore, I'm not sure there's anybody left out there currently. Maybe Nakeem Nicks from Hicks from Chicago could come in and play nose for them, and then they don't have to worry about that. That money they can move on from Tuitt, plug him in, and then draft a backup nose in a later round because Alu is not going to be here forever. I think the guy's
No,
35,
no,
coming
not at
off a
all.
major
Yeah.
injury. Who knows how that's going to play out, but I think there's a lot of
Mhm.
different moves that they can make there.
Okay, yeah, I think with the addition of Brian Flores and now Terrell Austin, being bumped up to defensive coordinator, I'm hoping that this year they start teaching these guys how to make turnovers because the Steelers do a lot of good blitzing and a lot of good tackling at times. But the problem I have is they don't create turnovers. They don't punch the ball out of people's hands. They don't. There's a lot of that they don't do. And I think if they do that, create some turnovers, so we can get the ball back or we can keep the other offense off the field. You see, those kinds of things. I think the Steelers have a chance of really winning this coming season.
Where I think the Steelers failed in that regard last year was they were a sieve up the middle.
Yeah.
You couldn't get around Watt, and Hayward had one side locked down. But at the end of the day, they were rotating in a bunch of rookies or guys that were just subpar players.
Taco
Uh,
Charlton.
yeah, like I mean, and so when you look at that, everything starts with the line, right? And if you're getting pushed off the line, there were a lot of third down conversions against them. They were the worst in the league at stopping the run, and so that put a lot of pressure on everybody else. And I think you do have some turnover guys like a Minka Fitzpatrick that's proven that he can do that year in and year out, or a T.J. Watt that's proven that, and to some degree Hayward, but it would be nice to see Bush grow into his role. They traded up
Yes.
to get this
Yeah.
guy, and I know he's coming off a difficult injury. And I'm
Oh,
hoping that Miles Jack comes in and we get the Miles Jack from 2 years ago as opposed to the Miles Jack from last year. And if they're able to kind of plug that in, I think that will also, help them, solve that problem of the run, which will make it easier for them in the passing game. But they've done the right things. They've put a lot of money into their defense, and I'm sure they're going to draft on the defensive side of the ball too. But to your point about turnovers, they were there 2 years ago, and they weren't there last year.
yeah.
And a lot of
Exactly.
that goes, it's the roll of the dice. The injury bug bit them hard, and
And then
as a
they
result,
only
they
had
weren't
three
prepared.
guys doing anything, and that was Minka, T.J. Watt, and Cam Hayward. Those were the
Yeah,
guys that carried the load. And I tell you what, those three guys are great at carrying the load, but sometimes you got to have other people stepping up. They
yeah.
re-signed Spillane. They re-signed, so I mean, we'll see what happens this year. I think the addition of Brian Flores is going to be okay as far as the Steelers go. Now, my next question to you is, where do you think the Steelers have an opportunity at Kenny Pickett? I think there's too many teams that need quarterbacks, and a couple guys like Carolina's Matt Rule. He's walking on eggshells down there. He needs a quarterback. Dennis Allen. Well, the Saints just re-signed Jamison Winston today. They gave him a 2-year contract for $28 million. But I'm sure he's still going to look for a young guy to grow down in the Saints organization. And then I heard Washington was, even though they got Carson Wentz, was looking at Pickett as well. And I'm hearing Philadelphia now is even looking at him. So I don't think he'll be there for the Steelers anyway. But if he is, uh, you know, now the Steelers have to flip a coin, Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett. If they're both there, I don't think either one of them are going to be there.
Well, I mean, if you just start ticking off some of those guys, you've got Carolina at 6, and the connections. Matt Rule, when he was at Temple, he recruited Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett committed to him at Temple, and then when Matt took the job and went south to the SEC, Kenny flipped and came to Pitt, and as the story goes, and now you have David Tepper, who owns the Carolina Panthers. He's also a Pitt guy,
Yeah,
and there's a
ties to
connection there.
Pittsburgh. Yeah,
Yeah, so I'm sure they have an interest in him at 6. And then at 8, you have the Atlanta Falcons. And Marcus Mariota is not going to cut it, right?
Oh, that's
Marcus
right.
Mariota
Yeah, I forgot
is what
about
it
the
is.
Falcons. They just traded Matt Ryan away.
Yeah, so you've got
yeah,
the
and when
Falcons at 8.
Mariota. Yeah, well, he can hold the fort. I mean, hold the fort
Well,
on Mariota.
that's likely what it would
Yeah.
be. He's a holding the fort, or he's a roll of the dice. Like, or you give him a second chance. He didn't pan out in Tennessee, but can he later in his career turn it around and pull the Mitch Trubisky? But when you get into the Atlantas of the world, you're now talking about a dome. Which, if you are worried about hand size with Kenny, he's in a dome. He'll be in a controlled atmosphere in Atlanta 8 times a year, plus playoffs, plus he'll go to New Orleans 1 time a year, plus, right? And then you get to 9, and you have Seattle, who still doesn't have a quarterback.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Seattle.
Drew Lock,
Russell
right?
Wilson. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got that, and they have multiple first-round picks. So if they like Malik Willis or they like Kenny Pickett, those are 3 in the top 10 that could pull the trigger on one or both of those guys, and they'll be gone. And then right before the Steelers, you see the New Orleans Saints at 18, and the Steelers would have to trade up to 17 in front of them with San Diego if they wanted a shot at either or both of those guys if they make it through. I think Kenny. I think the presumptive facts about Kenny are that he may have a limited ceiling, but he's got a guaranteed floor. And folks, they compare him to like a potential Kirk Cousins or an Andy Dalton, and that ain't bad. Maybe he can be better than that, but I think everyone understands he'll be a good pro. Malik Willis is a roll of the dice. You might be getting the next Deshaun Watson, or you might be getting the next Achille Smith. I mean, the guy just he as much as he's gifted athletically, he's also proven he can't win at Liberty. I mean, this is a guy, and the same thing happened with Trey Lance. I mean, he's playing in one of the Dakotas last year, and he has all these athletic gifts.
I thought he
hasn't played in a pro offense.
I thought he was going to be good in the NFL, and here he's laying an egg. Jordan,
well, he's still maybe
sitting around.
He's still maybe. So we'll see it, and there may be even more moves. And I think one of the reasons that you've seen as many quarterbacks move as you have, including the stuff with Baker Mayfield today, is that teams are not comfortable with this quarterback crop, right? If Kenny and Malik are the best of the bunch, these guys in other years might have been round 2 guys that right now have to be seen as round 1 guys as options for some of these teams. And I don't want to undersell either one of them, because I think that both of these guys could pan out in the long run.
There's 5 good quarterbacks, Joe, out there. Not just Pickett and Malik Willis. You got Sam Howell from North Carolina. He's a hard worker. I hear he's very durable. Matt Corral from Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin's down there. Got him in order, and that Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati. I mean, you got some guys out here that are quality guys that I think that if they may fall to the Steelers in the second round or late round or something. Even if the Steelers were even to look at a quarterback later on in the draft, just to have an arm and or whatever, or to grow later on. Or something.
Yeah, I would add one other name to that list too. I think Carson Strong has a chance.
That's right.
That guy's got one hell of an arm.
Yeah, I forgot about him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's okay. I mean, but I think that of that group of core 6, they're all going to be in positions where they're going to be fighting for all those guys this year could be fighting for a starting job based on their qualifications and the amount of teams that still need quarterbacks. So if you tick them through, even though Atlanta won't admit it, Carolina's yes, Atlanta won't admit it. Seattle might admit it, but and what do you? I mean, there's just you still have New Orleans, and the Jameis Winston thing was done out of necessity in the same way Marcus Mariota was done out of necessity.
Right.
And then you still have some what I would describe as doubt, as you mentioned earlier, the Philadelphia Eagles not happy with Hurts. They were in the game early for for Deshaun Watson, and then that kind of went away. Hurts took down all of his Philadelphia Eagles stuff, in the same way Kyler Murray did out in Arizona. He took them off. So, they've obviously they're looking. It's gotten out that they're looking and they're dissatisfied. But a team like Philly needs a lot more than just one quarterback. You know what I mean?
Right.
And,
Oh,
and
yeah,
they,
yeah,
they've got the draft
yeah.
picks to move around and do what they want to do this year
Mhm.
and next. They could easily do that. But I think that, the Steelers have also shown an interest in some of these other guys that are not named Kenny Pickett or Malik Willis. I mean, they've taken a real shine to Sam Howell. And I think Sam
Yeah.
Howell,
Mhm.
prior to this year, would have been the odds-on favorite to be the number one quarterback off the board. But his team was down. There was a lot of injuries, a lot of transition, and they just didn't play as well as he did in previous years. Can
Mhm.
he rebound from that? I think the answer is yes. I think he's got the talent for that, and I do think he's smart. I do think he's a rugged player. I do think he's someone that has an arm that's strong enough to play in this league. It's just a matter of a team taking a chance on him,
On him.
and him, finding the right place for him.
Yeah, well, system does it too. You got to find the right team that has a good system that you can run, and I think, the jury's still out on Matt Canada. I like Matt Canada. I think he last year he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He had to sort of tinker things for Ben. We all know that. So I think this year, second year going into this, I think Matt Canada's offense we're going to see as a whole. I think we're really going to see a lot more of the jet sweeps and a little more of the running game and some of these fancy pass plays and things like that. And if we can get the offensive line in order, I was actually quite surprised the Steelers got rid of Zach Banner, but I wasn't surprised either because he came with a pretty big hit, and he had a lot of money invested in him. And I don't know what happened last year. He wanted to play. He claims he was ready. The team never put him out there. I find that hard to believe, and I find it very difficult. I heard Joe Haeg is going to be back this year. Joe Haeg is supposed to be one of these multiple guys, and Matt Canada likes to use these offensive linemen in pass plays. We saw that at Pitt. We have Joe Haeg and maybe a couple other guys that we have that might be able to fit that role. As far as offensive linemen go for Matt Canada's offense. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think to your earlier point, if he could have played with the way the offensive line was last year, he would have played. You know what I mean? They
Right.
could have called you or me and had us come
Yeah,
out. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
body out there that could have given them something more than Green was giving them, or giving them something more than Trey Turner was giving them. And I don't think Turner played all that bad,
No,
or all
no.
that
I
poorly,
thought he
rather.
did a pretty adequate job. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
just yeah. In the case of Banner, I mean, if the guy, it couldn't have been any worse than what they had going on, and I think they wanted to see what they had in Dan Moore, and you sometimes have to suffer through rookie years to find out what you've got. Chooks was moved around on the line and was playing
yeah.
injured
I
part of the
wasn't
year.
real happy about resigning him. I mean, I
Yeah,
thought
especially yeah,
yeah.
they made a commitment. They clearly see something that perhaps you and I don't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm willing to look. They're the professionals here. Let them
Right.
kind of dictate whether or not
New
they
a
they,
new
they like
new
that.
offensive line coach, that Pat Meyer. So I mean,
Yeah,
I think my co-host Smoking Jim Frazier, he used to work for the Steelers, and he was a scout, and he told me he said this Pat Meyer is going to be real good. He said this offensive line coach. He had a couple rough years in Carolina, but he thinks he can get this line in order this year.
yeah, and I mean, I think everybody had a couple of rough years in Carolina. I mean, the
Right.
Sam
Yeah.
Darnold
Yeah.
experiment, the Teddy Bridgewater experiment, Matt Rule's finding his professional legs, and I think Matt's a guy just like Matt Canada that will
Mhm.
figure out this game. They're
This
clearly
game.
smart enough to do this. And if you've got a quarterback that is a little bit more mobile than Ben was a statue. I mean, as much as I love Ben, and he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, at the
I
end of
loved
the
them
day,
too, but
yeah, I mean, he was what he was. I mean, he was just a
yeah.
pocket passer. You knew that that's how they were going to move the ball. The line was not there for him, and therefore he got rushed. And every now and then he'd make something happen. But they were a mediocre team that snuck into the playoffs and drove their draft stock down from what it could have been a year that we're drafting in the
Yeah.
top
Oh,
10
yeah.
down
Yeah.
to 20, which they always do. You know what I mean? They're
Well, if they
always
wouldn't have Joe, if they wouldn't have made any mistakes against Cincinnati and at least won one of those games, they could have actually been in there with Cincinnati for a record. I mean, they were not
Yeah.
that far behind Cincinnati. I mean, I've had this discussion many times with some of my other media colleagues from Steel City Sports World, Luther Dupree, Claudio Rosano, and Smoke and Jim. We had this discussion, and we all said the same thing. We really were not that far behind Cincinnati. I mean, and we did it with a bad offensive line and a mobile statue quarterback. We had a good running game with Najee Harris. I really wish they'd do something with this Benny Smell. I call him Smell because he stinks. So I mean, I really think they need to do something with him. They need to do something with Trey Edwards, Terrell Edmonds, his brother. They need to do something with him too. You know what I'm saying? Kellen Bassage isn't going to do it. They got to get somebody in here, to back up Najee Harris a little bit or spell him off better than what they have.
Well, a couple of things to your point. I mean, Tomlin has always been ride with the guy until the wheels fall off, right? He did that with Willie
Yeah, I know.
Parker at the
He
end.
did it with Willie Parker.
James Conner, who was better served having someone step in and take some of the load off him. Instead, he was continuously injured. I'm hoping that same fate does not await a Najee Harris like it did for a Le'Veon Bell or a James Conner.
And Willie
to
Parker,
your point,
to
the people behind Harris, I'm not sure any of them could. I mean, I've seen now 4 years of Benny Snell, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I've seen Anthony McFarland. I'm still to this day surprised they drafted him. I mean, the guy's he could have easily been just converted into a kick returner because I'm not sure he can play. I thought they expected him to be more versatile as a third down back and do some things that he hasn't proven he can do in the last 2 seasons. Kalen Ballage was just a poor signing. It didn't work out, and they need to move on from that. If they could find a quality back that could come in and be that guy just in case Najee gets injured, then I think that's a good move for them in the mid rounds. Now they don't have much of a mid round. They've got 1 4th-round compensatory pick and then 2 7s.
Right.
So there's not a lot of room to move there. But there might be some things I can find on the free agents, scrap heap after the draft. And as we start to get closer to June and those June 1 cuts, you're going to see another round of folks that are out of work that they might be able to find someone as a veteran and plug them in that role. Now, maybe they're happy with Benny Snell, but I think Benny's had 1 good game while he's been here. And I was a Benny Snell fan when they drafted him a few years ago. I was excited. I mean, I saw this kid play in Kentucky. He looked like the quintessential Steelers running back. Like, I'm going to grind it. I'm going to pound you in the face, and then you're going to get tired of me hitting you, and then I'm going to keep on running over you. And we just haven't seen it, And I'm hoping that maybe he finds his legs this year. But that's the one problem that you've got with Najee is there's nobody behind him.
Yeah, I know, and I hope they have to do something, Joe, because if they don't this year, they're going to run the wheels off him until they fall off, and when they fall off, what are they going to do after that? McFarland, on the other hand, I'll tell you what, I got a nugget for you about McFarland. He was recommended by Tomlin's son Dino when he was in Maryland. When Dino was at Maryland before I heard he's transferring out of Maryland right now. Dino Tomlin. He was McFarland was recommended. And then also don't forget Matt Canada was in Maryland too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how McFarland ended up on a team. You see? Yeah. So, but like I said, you're right to your point about McFarland. I thought he's laid an egg over the last few years. And then I call Benny Snell Smell because he stinks. And Kalen Bassett, he's just there. Are we going to see? Do you think we're going to see a little more Derek Watt at fullback because everyone's crying about how he's a special teams player and we're overpaying him? Is that? Do you think that's true, or do you think
I mean, the fullback is kind of it's a position that only a few teams use anymore, and I think if they were serious about using it, they would have tried to use it more last year than they did because they might have needed that extra blocker for a poor offensive line, having a lead blocker for Najee. I know that's not the sexy way that the NFL plays the game anymore, but there's a few teams that always have a fullback that you can use or plug in, or what other teams have done is use an offensive lineman or even a defensive tackle in that position just to eat up space and take a blocker on. So sure, you can say they overpaid him, but I don't blame them for overpaying him if they planned on using him. Hey, the guy
Right.
clearly has the talent to do it. Last year, they didn't use him at all, and when they did use him, it was little bits and
Last
pieces,
minute
nickels and
stuff. Yeah.
dimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
really wasn't effective. If they're going to make him part of the game and they're going to do that in the same way that Matt Canada used George Aston a few years ago at Pitt,
Yeah. I remember George Aston.
he
Yes.
was a guy that came out of the backfield and caught the ball. He was a guy
Caught
that
the ball.
they could hand
Right.
the ball off on the fullback, the dive. He was somebody that was a great lead blocker for some of those pit backs. If Canada uses him in that same way this year, the problem was last year Ben was in the shotgun an inordinate amount of time, and you don't use a fullback when you're in the shotgun that much. So if Trubisky is somebody they're going to use and do rollouts and do some things with some throwbacks and I'm sure they can find a way of using him. And I think there is some pressure on both management and coaches to find a way to use him, or else why are you paying them this contract?
I was out today, Joe, and I when I go out around draft time, I talk to different breeds of people. I was out talking to some homeless people, and they said that they think the Steelers are going to take Cal Adonis from Pitt, the long snapper, in the first round.
So Cal, I mean,
I'm
look,
just,
I'm a Pitt guy.
yeah,
There's a couple of, and I'm glad you brought this up because no one ever talks about this. Nobody ever talks about this.
I
But a few
know.
years, but a few
It's like
years ago, we drafted a long snapper in the sixth round,
I
and
remember it.
he
Yeah,
didn't
from
make the
Wisconsin or
team.
something. He was
You know,
terrible. Yeah.
yeah, and then
No,
last year we
Louisville.
drafted a punter
Yeah.
who just petered out and didn't do well. Now there was a lot of backstory to that. I understand the kid had some problems in his family, but this year when you do have a Cal out of Adamitis who's sitting there and they've seen him practice for the last 5 years right next door to them, as
Right.
well as a punter named Matt Ariza out of San Diego State. This kid's kicking 70-yard punts. He's like the Ray Guy. If they ever wanted to redress those things with those two seventh rounds, I wouldn't be that wouldn't put me away. I mean, Boswell's done really well, and I don't think you have to screw around with kicker. But I'm not sure Harvin's the answer at punter. And if we could find a long sapper that has the quality that he does, and I guess they're gonna have to also fight him for. There's a potential he may sign in one of the developmental leagues for the World Wrestling Entertainment, WWE.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, the
So
XFL. Yeah.
the guy, he's clearly going to end up doing well for himself. But if the Steelers can find a way to get him on the roster as a Pitt guy, I would be happy with that. I wouldn't expect it though.
Right. Well, the Maulers are back USFL. He could go there as well later down the road. They already had their supplemental draft and things like that. So Paxton Lynch is going to play for the Michigan Panthers.
Mm.
Jeff Fisher's the head coach here.
Yeah, Jeff.
So
I've always liked Jeff Fisher as a coach. I know that sometimes he gets a bad rap because he wasn't able to finish a job when he was in
that's just
Tennessee,
yeah.
and then he got out to the
Or
Rams.
with the Rams.
Yeah,
It was with the
but he was
Rams.
responsible for some of those Rams drafts, including Aaron Donald.
Donald, yeah.
I was also responsible for Jared Goff.
Right.
But
Right.
he was, he got Gurley in there. There was a lot of guys he brought in and was building up that team. And when they let him go for underachievement, I think Sean McVay was the benefactor of that and inherited some strong Rams core. And then Sean, for whatever reason, has just decided that he doesn't need a draft.
Right.
And he went out and
Yeah.
traded a bunch of picks for Jalen Ramsey. He went out and traded a bunch of
Yeah.
picks, to this past year to get Matt Stafford. He's gone out and gotten Von Miller. He's decided he's going to win with veterans and show everybody he can do it without having to worry. And I don't know if they have a draft, until like 2024 or 2025. Literally, I mean, the guy has sold out any kind of development, and it worked. He won his Super Bowl, and
Yeah.
he might win
Yeah.
another. So, we'll see what happens with that. It's just a different kind of philosophy and one that runs counter to what the Steelers do, where the Steelers do kind of they like to hold on to their draft picks. They like to develop these guys. They like to go out and stay where they are. And every now and then they'll reach up and grab somebody. They reached up and grabbed Polamalu and it worked. They reached up and grabbed Devin Bush and the jury's still out. But there
Yeah.
are times where you can see them doing it, and other times they just stay put and guys fall to them.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I think they're going to do this year. Although there's a couple mock drafts out there have them trading up to 17 with the LA Chargers for Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett. There's two mock drafts that have them doing that. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I don't think they should do anything. I think they should sit there and wait because I think there's enough talent out there and all the needs that they have. It's not like they have one need and they have to reach to get it like they did with wide receiver and linebacker. We talked about earlier in regards to that. But getting back to Presley Harvin, he was a Ray Guy winner. He won the Ray Guy Award. With Georgia Tech, I watched him punt against Pitt, and then he was good at fake kicks and punts, and they never used him this year with that. I thought that could have helped the Steelers out a little bit by using him for that. I was
Yeah,
told he was real good with that.
yeah,
You
and
know,
that's why I mentioned this Metariza before, because this is a guy that also kicks field goals. This guy is also someone who runs down the field and makes tackles. This is a guy that can throw the ball. He's proven him to sort of be above and beyond. Now, those kind of guys can also be busts, and I'm not writing Harvin off. I mean, that let's
right?
face it, that was his first year. Everybody gets a sort of a rookie mulligan, and I understand he had some personal issues with home, with some families, and I think that let's see what he does here in camp and whether or not there's a play there. But if there was a special teams move that the Steelers could consider, I think Ariza from San Diego State might be someone that they would maybe take an interest in if they've given up on Harvin. And
I
I
don't
don't
think
know
I
if they
don't
do or
think
don't.
they have. I don't know, but we'll see. I mean, they could bring somebody in from off the scrap heap, and he could punt better, and they might go with that. I mean,
Yeah,
I've seen the Steelers do that as well, and we'll go from there. But I believe that this year could be a good year for the Steelers because of some of the free agents they signed. And if they can make some more improvements in the draft and see what happens during training camps back at Latrobe this year. So I'm thinking, there's going to be some better bonding there. They don't, they're not able to go home. They're going to be there for a month or whatever. So that's going to help a little bit with the team bonding and things like that. And because the Steelers even came out and admitted that the guys going home from Heinz Field every day or from the Southside facility, and they didn't get a chance to really get a grind into training camp. You see what I'm saying?
yeah,
And that camp atmosphere, that grind. I think the heat and and the grind out there. I think that that's something that they probably could have used the last couple of years and they didn't. And I'm thinking this year might be better. I mean, I think it's going to be better off for them as far as getting back out there for training camp. Sports Corner with Ralph Williams. We're live here on YouTube. We have 7 minutes to go. My guest Joe Kuglis, who is a draft guru here in Pittsburgh, and we were just talking Steelers, what they're going to do, what's going on around the league with some of these picks. All right, where do you see Jacksonville going, Joe? Because they're the number one pick, and they got Doug Peterson as their coach. You see them going quarterback again, or do you see them doing some different stuff, or how do you
well, yeah,
see that?
I think that they're going to be happy with Trevor Lawrence. I think that Lawrence is somebody that they're going to stick it out with. The quarterback, they're going to build around him. In order to do that, if I were Jacksonville, I would look at Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu as a stalwart, 10-year left tackle for my franchise quarterback. However, Jacksonville has plenty of holes. And Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan as an edge rusher will really bolster that defense. He's a natural leader. He's somebody that if they draft him and plug him in, that's a can't miss pick. And so I think that they need to make a decision on whether or not they want to go tackle or whether or not they're going to go edge. And I also, look, they've gone out and signed a bunch of players, overpaid for some of their free agents, but they are building a team around that. And I think that Peterson will, be able to kind of at least hit the brake on the decline of the team. And we'll see what happens too. I mean, people may forget that last year they had 2 first-round picks, and they went out and got Travis Etienne, who missed the season because of an injury that he suffered in preseason. And they were playing
Mhm.
with James Robinson the rest of the year, which, of course, James Robinson is a great back in his own right. But they get Etienne back, and Etienne has speed that Robinson doesn't have. And I think it's a little bit of a thunder and lightning there. And I think that will also help, Trevor Lawrence. But they need to get receivers down there too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, last year they didn't have anybody to throw to. Laviska Shenault, for all his speed, just hasn't worked out. I don't know why. He had maybe one good game the entire season, and that was against Cincinnati. That he did well last year. And then they had a couple of journeymen that they plugged in free agency, and they just lost DJ Chark to the Detroit Lions, and so they need to rebuild on the in the wide receiver position. And so I can see them not first overall going wide receiver, but I can see them going wide receiver early in the second round if they decide to spend their first round on a left tackle or on edge.
Right. All right. We only have about 4 minutes left, Joe. Let's go through the AFC North real quick. Where do you think Baltimore, Cleveland, and Cincy are going to go?
So unfortunately for me, I think Baltimore is going to end up picking Tyler Lindenbaum. He's the center
Okay.
that has positional flexibility from Iowa. I would have loved to have seen the Steelers get him, but Baltimore picks before
They
us.
always pick in front of us. They
Yeah,
always
and
take from us, and it's
yeah, and so from that perspective, I think that Linderbaum would be a perfect fit for them and be somebody that the Steelers are going to hate playing against, for the next 10 years of his career. I just think I can see that coming. I also think that if they don't go offensive line, I can see them going defensive line. So that might be a stop off for one of these guys like a Jordan Davis or one of the backers from Georgia or even Alabama. I could see that happening. In terms of Cleveland, Cleveland doesn't have that first round anymore. They gave it up for Deshaun Watson, and
Watson.
there's
Yeah.
still a pending suspension likely there for Watson. And if we see, I think they thought they might be able to get something for Baker Mayfield. That's likely, out the out the window, at this point with his release. So we don't have to worry about them in the first round. But they need to work on their defense. So I can see them in the later round, second and third round, second day, third day, spending some time focusing on that. They went out and got Amari Cooper. They went out and spent the money on Deshaun Watson. They did lose their center, J.C. Tretter, so they might also take a look at at offensive line down the road. But I think they're going to focus on helping Myles Garrett and that defense get better because last year they just weren't there. And so I think they'll take a look there. And Cincinnati. It's funny because they addressed all their needs in the offseason. They signed 3 offensive linemen. I can
They
still see
needed
them.
linemen.
Oh, I can
Yeah.
still see them picking another.
Yeah.
As strange as that might sound, and they're sitting in a situation where they can wait to see what falls to them on the offensive line and grab one of these guys that make it through, like a Trevor Penning or a Zion Johnson from Boston College, or a Kenyon Green, who's the best guard in the draft, and kind of like revisit what the Steelers did 12 or 13 years ago with David DeCastro. They just sat there drafting at like 28 or 26 or whatever the number was, and DeCastro
And
kept
waited.
sliding
He
and
was
sliding
there.
and sliding,
Yeah.
and boom, he was there. They didn't have to do anything. And Kenyon Green is going to be one of those guys that I think they could plug and chug in Cincinnati too if they stay focused on the offensive line. Other than that, they do no offense. If I were them, I would focus almost exclusively on defense and try to build that up to put themselves over and get that championship that's been eluding them since the start of the Super Bowl era.
Yeah, I mean, I saw their offensive line in Cincinnati get eaten alive by the Rams and in the Super Bowl, and I knew that was going to happen because they had a weak line. I saw Burrow throwing quick passes, so I knew there was going to be big problems in the Super Bowl, and here's where it came to. Joe, thanks for being part of the program tonight. I really appreciate it. We're going to have you on again in the future. I also do a TV show version of this. We're talking about getting together with Steel City Sports World and having a mega draft show. And I might bring you on, as part of the mega draft show,
I would
with
love
Mike
to do
and
that, and if you need me for that or a post mortem when the draft is over, I'd be more
Mhm.
than happy to do both.
Sure, absolutely. Where can people get a hold of you? As far
Yeah,
as
right now I'm in the process of building up the website and all my social media channels. So Joe Cookless at iCloud.com works great. Or they can always text me at 412-606-6067. But in the
Mhm.
next month or so, I'll get you all my social channel information. You can pass it along to your followers.
Oh, yeah, I will do that. Thank you. I really appreciate you being on here, sharing your knowledge of the NFL draft, and I'll have you come back on. We'll talk a post draft show we'll have here. Again, talk about who the Steelers picked. Do we think they're the picks were okay, and what other teams did. AFC North, we always have to keep dibs on them. And
Of
so
course.
one more thing I wanted to add about Cleveland. I really thought Cleveland's downfall this year was Kevin Stefanski thought his doo-doo didn't stink this year because they were supposed to preseason to go to the Super Bowl. Remember, everybody had Cleveland doing this and doing that. And I think Stefanski kind of thought that because I could see his expression on the sideline like, oh, well, nobody can beat us this year. We're supposed to be going to the Super Bowl, or we're predicted to go to the Super Bowl. And his team just fell apart. And I mean, and I think that's his attitude with that notion, I think was the reason why Cleveland fell last year. Now they're going to fall again this year too because of I don't see Deshaun Watson working out right now, for them. You know
Well,
what I
you
mean?
may be you may be right. I mean, Deshaun hasn't played in a year, and he's also going to face a suspension. And
Mhm.
Mayfield played injured last year, and he really only had one legitimate target. For whatever reason, he never, fed the ball, to OBJ, and Jarvis Landry was there, but Landry was injured last year, and their defense was subpar. I mean, they're a team that has a lot of holes to fill, and I know they're the sexy pick again. I was watching
Mhm.
a show today on NFL Network, where I think it was NFL Network, might have been ESPN, where Bart Scott had put them in his top 5 teams in the AFC to watch for this year. And Deshaun Watson will make a difference. They finally got somebody who can be, a quarterback for them, but at a heavy cost, and he comes with a suspension. So, is it a 6 game? Is it an 8 game? Is it a 2 game? Who knows what that's going to be? But
Who
at the end of
knows?
the
Yeah.
day, they're going to miss him for a bit, and then he's going to have to get up to speed. I mean, you just can't take a year off and not expect to just
And
throw
not
it to
expect
Russ in
right,
game one. So,
right.
I don't know if it's this year for Cleveland. We'll see what they do in the draft, but I hats off to them for taking the risk to bring the guy in, which just you're betting the house on this one. So we'll see how it
Yeah.
works out for them.
Yeah, well, Mike Tomlin will say we got another speedy quarterback that we got to chase. So I got to get some fast guys in here, for defense and stuff like that.
Nothing wrong with that. We could always use
That's
speed.
right, Joe. Thanks again. Have a great night. Thank you for being here. We're gonna have you on again,
Pleasure.
and I'm gonna try to get you on my TV show, and we'll talk some more draft. Thanks for being here.
Sounds like a
Appreciate
plan.
it.
Thank you, sir.
Uh-huh. You're welcome. And that was Joe Kuglis, who is an NFL draft guru. He was here tonight to talk with us here live on YouTube. I'm Ralph Williams. Thanks for watching Sports Corner. If you have any comments, please leave them in the comments section. I will see you next Tuesday for the podcast. Tomorrow's Wednesday edition of Pittsburgh Mauler Show. I'm postponing that show until the Maulers start play in April, and we'll be back with that show. But tomorrow, starting at 4 p.m. here, tomorrow afternoon, we are going to start. Well, not tomorrow. We're going to start it next Wednesday. We're going to start a wrestling podcast. We're going to talk professional wrestling. We have WrestleMania coming up, AEW, WWF, MLW, NWA, and all the local affiliates as well. We're going to talk wrestling here. It's going to be called Wrestle Chat. It's going to be with me, Ralph Williams. And don't forget, on every other Thursday, we have our Wrestle Talk show on Blog Talk Radio with myself and Mark Mancini. This coming Thursday, coming up, we were supposed to have our sports national show, the Black and Gold podcast, but we're not having it because Mark had a death in the family. Please send your prayers and condolences out to him. He had a death in the family just this week, and it'll be on next Thursday. I'm working on getting Smoking Jim Frazier and Luther Dupree from Steel City Sports World. We're going to talk for 1 hour. Blog Talk Radio, 347-205-9631. Next Thursday, we will be on Blog Talk Radio, Mark Mancini and I. And then the following week, after WrestleMania, we will be back with Wrestle Talk. We'll talk about WrestleMania and several others. But next Wednesday, 4 p.m., right here on YouTube, live, 4 p.m. start time, we will have a new Wrestle Chat. It's going to be called Wrestle Chat with me, Ralph Williams. I'm going to try to get a special guest on, and we're going to go from there. It will be the only live wrestling show that talks specifically wrestling for 30 minutes to an hour, depending on what kind of information I have, and we'll go there as well. Thanks for watching. Have a great night. Be safe.